Hi, and welcome to the Newbery Chronicles. This is a podcast in which two people read every Newbery Medal winning book, and then we talk about it once every few months. I am Michael.
And I'm Rebecca.
And we're back again. And this time we're talking about the 2006 Newbery Medal winning book, Criss by Lynne Ray Perkins, which, as I already mentioned, won the Newbery Medal in 2006. It's 2026 now. Happy 20 years to Criss.
Woohoo!
It's almost old enough to drink. I'll buy Criss to drink next year.
Okay.
That's what we will be talking about later on in the podcast. But first, as is our wont, we are going to talk about books we've read recently. And by recently, we are covering quite a bit of time because...
How long has it been?
Over a month.
Okay, that's not too long
It's
for
not
this podcast.
It's not too short either.
Not too long for this podcast.
I'm just saying this is why we have a lot of books to talk about that we've read recently. So, Rebecca, you seem like you had something you were about to say.
Well, I don't actually have a lot of books to talk about. Not because I haven't read a lot of books, but because I don't want to talk about a lot
Rebecca's
of books.
only read one good book since we
Not
last
true.
talked.
I've read other good books, but I was just looking at my list, and I was like, I'm not looking forward to talking about any of these except one, and I wanted to spare you all the time. So here's the deal. If you want to know everything I've been reading, follow me on Storygraph. And if you want to know what I thought about them, then if you are my friend, you have my phone number, you can text me. If you don't, everyone has the email address for this podcast, and you can email me, and I'll tell you what I thought. But
Wait, hold on. Who are you on Storygraph? How can people follow you on Storygraph?
I don't even remember what my username is. I will find that out and
She has
share
one
that.
follower, me.
That's not true.
How many followers do you have on Storygraph?
Haley Bell follows me. Megan Hughes follows me. Probably some more people.
I think I only have
follow
one
your
podcast.
mom, and she probably follows me back, although she might not know how to use it. But she's on there. So
You
anyway,
have way more people following you on Storygraph than I do.
know. Get with it. Anyway, I'll find out what my username is, and I'll tell you all at the end of the pod if you stay on. But I read a lovely book by a lovely author that you've heard me talk about on this podcast many times. I read Whistler by Ann Patchett, which is Anne's newest book that just came out this year. And when I finished it, I told Michael, this book felt like a perfect day. And that is still how I would describe it. We read this with my book club. I pre-ordered this book, so it's personally signed for me by Anne with a note to me, which was lovely.
What did the note say?
Came with a little postcard. It said, Rebecca, wishing you love and luck, Ann Patchett.
Oh,
That's sweet.
that is sweet. Have you seen that John Green is like signing all his books, and he's been live streaming it, and it's hours and hours that he is spending signing all these books?
That's going to make me feel guilty. Don't make me feel guilty.
You're giving them your money. Why would you?
I did give them my money.
Why would you feel guilty?
So let me talk to you about this book, okay? We read this with my book club, like I said, and we all loved it. And this is a story about this woman who reunites with her stepfather, who was divorced from her mom when she was a child and like completely lost connection with him since then. And it's a retelling of this really they're like retelling the story about this tragic event that they went through together when she was a child into adulthood. And I'm not going to tell you anything more about it because I don't want to give anything away.
I whistled too close to the sun.
Oh my gosh. What I did love about this book is, as always, Anne's prose is beautiful. Her characters are just the most human people, and I mean that in a way of like, they are flawed and yet you love them. And people's like, I don't know how to describe it, but when she writes about people, it's like, I want to see people in the loving, caring, attached yet not too attached way that you view people. You don't put them on pedestals, but you also don't overly punish them when they make mistakes. And I just think it's a really beautiful way to live and see the world. And this book is Ann Patchett at her finest. It's just magnificent. Anyway, You should all read it. There's a horse on the cover, but don't let that deter you. It's barely about a horse.
Rebecca described this book to someone else as a book for people who don't like horses, which makes it sound like something horrible happens to a horse.
No, I think, I didn't say that.
I thought that she did.
No, I think she said something like that in like a late, she was on Seth Meyers' show or something, and she said something like that.
Yeah,
so I might have been
like
quoting
this is The Godfather or something where you see a horse mutilated.
She was just telling you, if you don't like horses, it's okay. Don't not read this book. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it, but you should all read it, and you will all love it, I think.
Record time. You're going to make me... I always take longer on this than you do.
Then maybe you should just pick one that you want to talk about.
No, I'm not going to just pick one, but I'll be quicker than normal. Maybe not as quick as you.
Okay.
Okay, so I've read several books since our last recording, and I'll just go in chronological order in terms of what I finished. First, I read In the Devil's Snare, The Salem Witchcraft Trials, The Salem Witchcraft Trial. Why am I having such a hard time reading the title of this book? It's because it's an academic-sounding book. In the Devil's Snare, The Salem Witchcraft Crisis of 1692 by Mary Beth Norton. This is a book that is exactly what it describes. It's about the Salem witch trials in Salem in 1692. And you may recognize this from such vaunted literary adaptations as The Crucible by Arthur Miller, or any number of things that have to do with Salem. I bought this in Salem, Massachusetts when we visited this spring, and it is a very detailed blow-by-blow account of the Salem witch trials, in which this author, in addition to just chronicling based on the archives what the Salem witch trials were about, also posits the theory that because this is a big question in history, why did the girls act the way that they did? You know, like, people can kind of guess, like, a lot of other, like, you know, material and psychological reasons why, like, people would have, you know, gotten behind this witchcraft hysteria. But why did the girls, the initial girls, like the young girls, you know, act the way that they did to kind of incite the witch trials? And Mary Beth Norton's theory is that it was a manifestation of anxieties surrounding conflict with Native Americans at the time, which is interesting. I don't know enough about other competing theories to know if it was good or bad. You know, if it's a good or bad theory, I feel like I know a lot about the Salem witch trials now. I read it because I teach The Crucible in my classes. I will teach The Crucible this fall. Unfortunately, I don't feel like there's a lot in here to connect to The Crucible, because unfortunately Arthur Miller cared nothing about the history of the Salem witch trials, and in fact wrote a play that is flagrantly ahistorical, which he says in his foreword, but I don't think I was prepared for how ahistorical his book is. So I read that. Next, I read Knoxville, a lot of colons in my books. Knoxville, This Obscure Prismatic City, which is by Jack Neely. If you live in Knoxville, you may have heard the name Jack Neely. He's kind of one of our big historians in the area. What this book does is it puts together a bunch of pieces that he wrote for our dearly departed alt weekly, the Metro Pulse. So these are just kind of like a collection of writings that are only connected in the sense of they're about Knoxville history, and they're kind of in the Jack Neely style of like kind of finding quirky, interesting things about, you know, different things that have happened in Knoxville. You know, he talks about the Battle of Depot Street, which is a riot that broke out between workers of two rival streetcar companies in like the very late 1800s in Knoxville. He talks about the death of Hank Williams, which the day Hank Williams died, he came through and was supposed to perform in Knoxville. He talks about a variety of other things. It is fun to read. Jack Neely is a good writer and a good storyteller. He's not a particularly academic historian, and I was bemoaning with my friends not too long ago that like Knoxville lacks a true like critical historian of its history. But this was fun. I read Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. Every summer I try to read a big book. several years ago, I read Gravity's Rainbow for the first time. I thought it was very good, very confusing. One of my friends wanted to read Gravity's Rainbow, and so I decided to reread it. And it turns out when you reread a confusing book, it's less confusing the second time. It is still a little bit confusing to me. But, I mean, if you're a certain type of person, aka me, Gravity's Rainbow is one of the really, really like towering achievements of American literature of like, the 20th century. So always a good time to revisit. I also read my only new release, and by new release I mean 2026. My only new release on this list is a book called Python's Kiss by Louise Erdrich, which is a short story collection based on short stories that were written over the last couple of decades. So it's not really a new release, except that this collection was just released this year. I thought this was really lovely. I've never read anything by Louise Erdrich before. I know that she has some books that I've been meaning to read that I've never gotten around to. This is the first of hers that I've read. She is Native American, and at the very specific moment, I cannot remember what indigenous nation she is from, but she's a really great short story writer. I got this book thinking it was going to be kind of like, for some reason I thought it was going to be like horror or some fantasy, and it is. She has a few stories that are like that, but mostly it is stories about life in Minnesota, where she is from. So she is from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians of North Dakota. She lives, I believe, in Minnesota, though, because that's where most of these stories are set. Like I mentioned, there's a few that are kind of speculative. There's a couple stories that are about, like, what if the afterlife were run by a bunch of corporations? But most of her stories are about either life in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or life in just kind of like rural, like small town Minnesota. And this is a really eclectic and really fun group of short stories. There's a short story about a guy driving a school bus in a blizzard that's really very good. There's another short story about basically like a land dispute where this guy comes home and this guy says, hey, I actually live here and I own this, but the guy thinks like, wait, this is my house. And so they have to get the sheriff involved. I just thought these were really great stories. It was really fun to read. Also, I got the large print edition from the library because that's the only version that they had. And let me tell you, it is nice reading a large print book. It, I don't know, maybe I'm getting old, but it's not as much of a strain on the eye as the pages go by faster. It feels like you're reading more. I recommend large print, and maybe I'll get more large print books. Although part of me worries that it's a little bit like parking in the handicap spot, because I'm not actually visually impaired. It's just nice,
I think it's fine.
Last book I'm going to mention is a book I just read, just finished yesterday, in fact, called "There Is No Anti-Memetics Division." It's a pretty short sci-fi novel by a person named Quantum, QNTM. This is a text that was basically published serially online first, and then was kind of repackaged as this book and I guess re-edited and stuff. And it's a science fiction novel about this idea that like, a meme. I mean, sometimes we use memes in terms of like, these are images with text on them that tell jokes. But like the kind of root of meme is like the way that human ideas kind of spread and mutate based on like, the same kind of principles as like genes mutate, coined by Richard Dawkins. And so this kind of postulates that like, what if there were what was called like basically like anti-memes, which are things out in the world that could destroy human information and thereby like be really harmful to human society. If all of a sudden you forget that you are married to someone and you think instead that you have an intruder in your home, this could be really devastating to your well-being and the well-being of your spouse, right? And so like this is basically about a entity, like an organization that is tasked with like making sure that these anti-memes don't harm human society. And so it kind of begins almost like a short story collection in which, like, you're just dealing with a new anti-meme each chapter, but eventually it builds in this bigger kind of global spanning story. And it was pretty good. I liked it. I don't know that... I think the core idea is the most interesting part of the book. The characters aren't particularly, like, psychologically engaging or anything like that. It's just, what if there were things that could destroy human information? And I thought that was interesting. So, pretty good book. That's all I've read.
Awesome.
I went longer than you, about twice as long.
But we still got out of here in under 16 minutes.
Under 16. Although if I talk a little bit longer about being under 16 minutes, we might hit 16 minutes.
You don't have to. Let's talk about the author of Criss, Lynne Perkins. So let me just tell you that the Wikipedia page is very bare on Lynne Perkins. There is some stuff there, but thankfully they had a link to her website, which is a blog that she still writes in. Like, her most updated post was last month. So the fact that she's still writing a blog, I think, is really cool that people engage with.
Good for Lynne.
If you want to talk to her, you can comment on her blog. She was born in 1965 in Pittsburgh, but grew up in a nearby town called Cheswick. Her mother was an elementary school teacher, and her dad was a lab technician. And the way she describes her childhood is a very beautiful one. She grew up with a lot of kids who were her age on her street. They spent a lot of time outside, but she also really felt connected to characters and stories and felt like one day something would happen to her, just like it did to these characters, which is very similar to the main character of, well, I don't want to say main character, but one of the characters in Criss, Debbie. She studied art at Penn State and at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And she did a lot of jobs before she started writing. She framed pictures, she taught art classes, she worked as a cashier, she worked for a model railroad company.
A model railroad company?
Yes. And she moved to Boston and worked as a graphic designer. Boston is where she met her husband, Bill. And then they moved to Michigan and they grew Christmas trees there.
Wow.
They had children there. They raised their family in Michigan. They still live in Michigan today. And she continued drawing and painting. And then in 1993, she showed her illustration portfolio to the art director of Green Willow Books, which is a children's book publisher. And the director asked her if she was a writer. And she didn't know that this woman asked everyone who presents their illustration portfolio if they were a writer. And she thought that this woman must have noticed something writerly in her. So she goes home and she writes a story called Home Lovely, and Green Willow Books ends up publishing it, and she illustrated it. And
doesn't that just make you sick? Someone's just like, oh, I guess I'll write a book, and then it just gets published.
I think it's lovely. And this story was so good. It was a runner-up for the Boston Globe Horn Book Award. And then Green Willow Books has actually published all of her books since then, except for All Alone in the Universe. All Alone in the Universe is actually a novel that she wrote in 2000, which won several awards. And Criss is actually a sequel of that book, All Alone in the Universe.
Huh.
And Criss won the Newbery in 2006. For some reason, All Alone in the Universe is published by Scholastic and none of the other ones are, so I don't know why that is, but regardless. She's written several books. I think most of them are picture books. I can't tell on Wikipedia which ones are novels and which ones aren't. But there was this really sweet thing about, so and her blog indicates that she's writing a novel right now. So I thought her blog was just very charming and just reminded me of another time. But, like, there was this one comment on her About page where it was clear that they were doing, like, a book report or something. Well, I know it was a book report because I said that. And they were like, I need to learn about your early life. And I can't find out about your early life on any websites. Can you tell me about your early life? And she was like, Jenny, if you ask me 3 questions, I'll give 3 answers. How does that sound? And I just thought it was such a cute interchange, and it reminded me of, like, just a scene that might be in one of her stories where somebody is like bold enough to reach out to an author and then they respond in this way. It reminded me of, oh shoot. I think it's Strider, which is the sequel to Dear... No, well, I mean, it reminded me of Dear Mr. Henshaw. How he, like, writes to the author the whole time and then gets these little interchanges. I don't know, I just thought it was really sweet.
She never asked her a question, though. You showed me this interchange.
Well, not on the blog, but she might have emailed her or something. But what was really funny is there were other people that were asking her questions. And she said to them, like, Dear so-and-so, I don't remember their name, Dear so-and-so and anyone else doing homework, reference my About page, which was funny because that comment was on her About page. So, I don't know, it's just really funny to me. I think she got
Lynne
annoyed
is
by
tired of all the middle schoolers who are assigned crisscross.
It just felt like when your professor is like, per my syllabus, you know, sort of emails. Anyway, yeah, that's what I know about Lynne Ray Perkins.
Okay, sounds cool.
Tell us about this book.
So Crisscross. Crisscross is apparently the sequel to the book All Alone in the Universe, which I have not read. But
I think Debbie is the main character in that book.
Yeah, so in Crisscross, there are several main characters. We've got Hector, who is a boy who is learning to play guitar, among other things. We've got Debbie, who is kind of like looking for something to happen to her, because it's like a summer, and she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do over the summer. We've got Phil.
I can't remember anything about Phil.
He's just around.
They're all just around.
Yeah. And then we got Lenny. And basically these kids all live...
And Patty.
Yeah, but Patty doesn't count. She's just Debbie's friend. Like, she's not a POV character. Is there a single chapter in Patty's... These are all the POV characters that I've named. These are all just kids who all seem like they're in their, like, tweens, maybe.
Yeah. Well, some of them are teenagers.
Which ones?
I think Debbie's like 14, isn't she?
I don't know. Hector's older sister is a teenager for sure. She's like crushing on this guy who plays at an open mic at a community college at the beginning of the book, for instance. But basically, there's not a very structured plot of this book. It is these kids who all kind of have intersecting like social circles over the summer, and they all live in the same neighborhood in this town. I don't know if we're ever given the name of the town.
Yeah, it's called Seldom.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so Seldom. They live in Seldom, and basically, per the novel title, they all kind of crisscross in each other's lives. They also all enjoy this radio program called Crisscross, which basically sounds like Dr. Demento to me. You know what Dr. Demento is, Rebecca?
No.
This is like where Weird Al got his start. So on Dr. Demento, and apparently on Crisscross, they'll play like, you know, like Frank Zappa songs and like Tom Lehrer and like all those sorts of like, they play silly songs. And the reason I'm naming those ones specifically is that the book mentions Don't Eat Yellow Snow, which is a Frank Zappa song, Poisoning Pigeons in the Park, which is a Tom Lehrer song, and then something called Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road, which I remember my dad talking about, but I did not actually listen to this until I read this book. I was like, I should finally listen to what this song that my dad always talked about. And it's basically Wagon Wheel. Like, it's got that kind of like folksy like sort of thing, except what if it's about some like skunk roadkill and it smells. So like the idea is the book describes it as like a radio program for people who like Mad Magazine, which like tracks. And it's in this kind of nebulous era as well. Like the book is set, like it kind of vaguely feels like maybe the 1970s or 80s.
That's what NPR said, but I think they were just basing that on like when she would have grown up.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, it could be any time before there was internet and cell phones. Like, it doesn't...
It's definitely intentionally set before, like, smartphones and all
well,
of that.
In 2006, were there smartphones in 2006?
I guess you're right.
But there was no...
But before the internet,
There's no internet, there's no computers, there's no video games to speak of, so probably like the 80s or 70s. But whatever the case, these kids are just kind of like having I don't even know. Misadventures is like overstating it. These kids are having just kind of moments.
They're just existing
in proximity to one another, and they're like soulful moments, right? Like each of these characters is like kind of looking for meaning as they're kind of growing into a new person over the summer. And so there's like these little vignettes that happen, and they kind of just accumulate over the course of the book, until each character has kind of like had moments of growth or self-reflection or things like that, and then the book kind of culminates in this like block party / luau that like Lenny and his dad are putting on, where they roast a pig, and then like a bunch of the characters kind of are together talking and kind of bouncing off each other. It's not a book where there's like there may be a plot that happens and that plot may continue, or maybe you've seen the last of that plot. There's a very lengthy chapter at one point in the book involving probably the most like plot propulsive part of the book, in which Debbie is like supposed to be taking care of this older lady who's like a German immigrant, and her grandson?
Yeah.
Her grandson Peter is there, and she's having like some sort of medical incident, and she's got to like drive this woman to the hospital. Anyway, so there are moments where there's like all of a sudden like this plot that kind of coalesces, but for the most part it's just these characters kind of like, it's very slice of life, just kind of ambling around. Like Hector's learning how to play guitar, Debbie's like
helping the
neighbor,
crushing on her grandson.
Yeah, Lenny, we learn a little bit about Lenny. He's like this really smart kid who like at one point like the kind of basically learns how to read and starts reading encyclopedias, but then because of his kind of socioeconomic class, now he presents himself like the school puts him on the like career track rather than the college track, and so he's kind of like put into this kind of blue collar setting, but he's very content with that because he actually really likes working in blue collar, but he's kind of has this secret about being like really book smart.
He's also crushing on Debbie.
Hector is crushing on
Meadow.
This Meadow, who is in his guitar lessons class, and but Meadow is with the football player star Dan. What's his name?
Something boring.
Yeah, it's like Dan like Petzold or something like that. It's like this kind of like Midwestern-y German sounding name. But at any rate, that's the plot.
Yeah. That's the plot.
That's Criss. What'd you like about Criss?
I think Criss in general is a very sweet book. It's very subtle in the terms of like what themes it's communicating or like what's happening, but in a way that is like really just sweet. It's just very sweet. I think the prose is very good. There's this really cool thread of like Debbie's necklace that keeps traveling to different places because she like loses it, and
it like there's a moment at the end of the book where it like becomes like a person, or not a person, but it has like a personality, and it talks about like the side and frustration or something like that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Like a dog carries it to a part and someone else picks it up, and they don't know whose necklace it is, but he was like, oh, I'll just give this to Debbie because it's her name. And it is actually her necklace that at the very beginning she talks about the clasp as like kind of being problematic and she thinks she's going to lose it. And so I think that little thread was sweet, especially in a book that's like very episodic, to bring it all together with that necklace. I think in general it's a really hopeful book about childhood and about romance and about growth. And, you get a lot of that like angsty feelings of being like a preteen or early teen, along with like the really beautiful moments of just being with your friends and learning how to drive and getting into a scrape with a truck and kind of figuring it out together so you don't all get in trouble at the same time. Or like the idea of like you're learning something new. I just think of Hector with his guitar and wanting to try it out on a crowd, and like everybody kind of feels like, are you really ready to do this? But like, okay, and they kind of just let him try. So
which is at the luau at the end,
and
right? Where he plays a song for everyone.
And they never tell us anything about his actual like playing at the luau. They just tell us the before, and then everybody's on the roof after. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
So I just think it really captures a lot of people's feelings about like adolescence and just that coming of age really well in a hopeful way, like not in a dismissive or like overly positive way, but just in a like authentic, hopeful way. And I thought that was nice. What did you like?
I liked a lot about this. I think the prose is really good, like as you mentioned, and like it's really good in a way that I don't often see in, well, honestly, any sort of books, but especially like kids' books, in which it's very playful with the format. Like, for instance, there's a chapter in which the characters like more or less like speak in haiku, like for a good chunk of the chapter. And then there's another chapter where we have two characters, and it's Debbie and the football player, right? It's called like Wuthering Heights / Popular Mechanics. And Debbie is reading Wuthering Heights. Mm-hmm. And then the football player, I think it's the football, or maybe it's Lenny.
I think, no, it's Lenny, because
it is Lenny,
Lenny's
right.
watching her at the end. She's reading outside, and he's like, comes outside.
But the conceit of the chapter is it's written in two columns that are parallel to each other. And so to read the chapter, you got to kind of keep going between the two. And that, I think that's a really interesting format. So like, in addition to just having like really nice turns of phrases, which it does, it is really being ambitious with like the format and the structure of these different chapters. Although, like I said, it does have some really nice turns of phrases. It's been a while since I read this, so I like reread it, or not reread, but I flipped through it again before we recorded this. And like I wrote down just some stuff that I really liked. So for instance, Debbie gets sunburned early in the book, and it talks about how her legs looked like a freshly opened, unscooped box of Neapolitan ice cream minus the chocolate stripe. Which is just like an amazing.
I forgot that line, but it is a really good line.
But there's lines like this throughout where there's this kind of just like it's wild that she started out as an illustrator, because like this is such a confidently written piece of prose. And I realize this isn't her first book, but like still like this is like a really writerly style, here's another one. Like, so the elderly, like, German lady that Debbie works for or helps with, she was one of those elderly women whose cleavage starts about 2 inches below her collarbone, and your main response to it is an intellectual curiosity about how that can even physically work. Like, there's just little things like that is just like there's just these little gems of phrases in the book that I just thought were like wonderful, but it also is very character centric and always very warm. There's another one where like Dan is on a date with Meadow at what seems to be like a county fair or something like that, and like he's been eating all this stuff, and once he's like apple fritters or it's something like that, or like fried apple pies or something, and like he gets it, and then like it's that
apple dumplings
or apple dumplings, and it's that experience that I feel like everyone can relate to this, where it's like you eat something, you're like, oh man, that was good. It's like, oh no, I shouldn't have eaten that because that was now too much. And so he's feeling really full and uncomfortable. And it says, his stomach's burgeoning size crowded his heart, especially the underdeveloped kindness lobe. And he's like kind of like a jerk to Meadow after that.
Well, he's a jerk to Hector, who like ends up getting a lot of food. And he's feeling this internal like, oh, I ate too much. And he just like externalizes it to like making fun of him for as much food as he has.
Yeah, so I really like not just the formatting of the prose, which is very creative and inventive throughout, but also just like the basic mechanics of it, which are just, I think, consistently delightful. I also there's just some, like the way that it's structured around vignettes, I think, and you eventually build this web of like at the beginning of the book, it's a little bit hard to read because you're like, okay, here's Debbie, here's Hector, here's Lenny, and like, what's going on? Like, but as the book goes on, you don't necessarily, or at least I didn't necessarily get like an urgency of plot, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm just hanging out with these characters, and I'm just like spending time with these people in the same way that they're just spending time with each other. Like the fact that like the radio show Criss, they all come together. It's one of the few times in the book that they're actually together, is when they come and listen to this radio show at the same time every day or week. I'm not sure how often it is. And they all sit in Lenny's dad's truck and like turn on the radio in the truck and listen to Criss together, and they all kind of like bond over that, and then they kind of go their own separate ways. And I just think like the book is structured in a way that actually makes you feel like a participant in all that, because you're just another person there, like hanging out with them. And like I said, there's just some really delightful like vignettes as well. I already mentioned the one with the elderly lady that Debbie's helping. Is like a really long section, which it's probably the most conventionally exciting section, in which like Debbie's got to drive this car to get her to the hospital, and which pays off like her and Lenny having done like driving lessons together. But then there's also other things too, such as again with Debbie and Peter. I think it's Debbie and Peter, who's the grandson of the German lady, go on, like, they just get on this, like, regional bus, and they're like, let's just go to another town on the bus. And they just, like, go on the bus, they walk around the other town, and then ride the bus back, and that's it. But it's, like, this really evocative little moment of, like, they're all of a sudden outside of something that they're used to. They're just kind of seeing, like, what would happen if we did this. And they do it. There's another chapter where Debbie is looking through this old box that her mom has, and it has all these little figurines in it, and as well as like magazine clippings that her mom used to have, and like old pictures of her mom. And then it's just kind of like this interesting, like her like wondering, what was my mom like when she was my age? And then later on in the book you find out, because the mom overhears Debbie talking on the phone to Peter, that she's like got a crush on him. Like basically the mom figures out, and the mom is remembering back to how these figurines came from a boy that she had a crush on. And there's this little vignette about how this boy used to hide these figurines everywhere. And you just like for a second are like in a flashback with Debbie's mom. And it's just kind of out of nowhere, and it just like humanizes this character that for the most part has just been kind of just like there as, you know, kind of a logistical piece of like, well, Debbie must have a mother somewhere. And I don't know, I just think there's just all sorts of wonderful little pieces of this book. Like every little bit of this book has like something that it feels like you hit it and you're like, oh, that's why the author is telling us this. And it's not plot, it's like, here's something that's meaningful about it. And I don't know, I like that effect a lot. It just felt very human to me. Anyway, that's what I liked about it. What'd you not like, Rebecca?
Well, I feel like I need to make a confession. And that confession is that I mainly read this book late at night when I was falling asleep. And the other confession I need to make is I do not love episodic stories where I can't like figure out the connection between them. So the combination of like reading this book late at night where I was falling asleep with like, it is a story where the plot is not actually the thing that's driving the story, but it's the like relationships and the things happening in the moment. I had a lot of trouble keeping track of the characters, and it's not because it's not clear, it's because of the time of day. So I feel like there's a lot in this book that I missed or didn't, like when you're telling me these things, like, yeah, I remember that. That's really beautiful. But because I took so long to read it, because I read it at a bad time of day, because life's been kind of crazy this past, like, summer, I feel like I didn't read it well, I guess I should say.
I do think that, like, so I read this earlier, and I had to kind of reacquaint myself with the book today. And going back through it, it was helpful, because I think because of the structure of the book, it is kind of hard to hold on to a lot of it. And, like, revisiting it, I was able to pick out, like, oh, yeah, that did happen. I now appreciate this a little bit more coming back to it.
Yeah. I will say there's, like, a scene at the end at the luau where Debbie comes up on the roof and, what's her name, Roanne? Hector's sister is there.
Yeah.
And they have this really, like, she's telling her this really interesting, basically Debbie is like crushing on this guy, Peter, the lady who she's been helping.
And he's only in
Mrs.
town
Brunning.
temporarily. I didn't mention this earlier. He's like in town to make sure, because his family wants the grandmother to move in to a home, but she wants to be independent, so they send Peter to basically keep an eye on her.
So it's this quick summer romance, and she's basically asking Roanne, like, does it count? I feel like I love this guy, but I've only, like, you know, known him for a few weeks. Does that even count as, like, a romance? And then Roanne goes on this really long, ambling, beautiful story about these, like, women that she works with at this, like, office. And I thought it was, like, a really beautiful part of the book. And it's one of the longer chapters, and I felt like I was following it well, and I was interested in the story. But at the end of that whole conversation, I was like, I don't really know if sober teenagers would talk to each other like this. Like, it felt like they were high telling the story. But I don't know. It just felt like, I don't know if I should say I didn't like it, but it just really felt like you're watching an indie film with like characters,
kids
stuff, but they're supposed to be completely sober, but just like for a book that feels very true to life, that part didn't. I don't know. And then I really hate this, knowing now that she's an illustrator, but I don't know what the heck is going on with illustrations in this book.
I was wondering about that too, because they're a choice.
Yeah, there's like a stylistic choice there that I don't understand. I will say there's this one illustration. There's this like really crazy story about cats that I think it's in that same conversation with
like
Roanne.
Yeah, it is. It is in that same chapter. Yeah, where she's talking about this artist who has an increasingly like abstract cat illustrations, right?
And it's related to like her schizophrenia or something, and it's like if that was just described to me, I'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? But there was like a really vivid illustration of that, which I think was helpful, but other parts feel like they're black and white photographs, and others, I don't know, it was a stylistic choice I didn't understand.
Yeah, and I should maybe clarify for readers who maybe don't remember or haven't read this book, but like the illustrations don't function like normal illustrations in a novel. Like in a children's novel, normally what is happening with the illustrations is that it is depicting the scene that you're reading on the page. And that is only happening occasionally in this book. Most of the time, they're almost like visual accents to like what you're reading. Like they might be talking, like one character might be talking about like for instance, those cat paintings, and so like there's panels on the page that show you what these cat paintings are like, or like another character may be talking about like, this doesn't happen, but I can't think of another example off the top of my head, but like a character may talk about having tied their shoe, and on the page next to it there'll be like photographs of a shoe in various stages of being tied or untied, and it's kind of like, okay, I see how that connects, but why did you dedicate all this page space to this? It's very strange.
Yeah.
I guess it is just like that was the only thing I didn't like, is like I don't, and it's less I don't like it and more I just like, because it's easy to ignore, but like I just was thinking like, what is this for? Like this is clearly for something, and I guess it makes sense that she has an illustrator background.
Yeah.
They're not even all in the same format. Like some of these are drawn, some of these are photographs, some of these look like digital images in a way.
Which goes along with the whole book, you know, like the idea of there being like these different perspectives that you have throughout the book, a different way of telling a story, and part of that is through illustrations. All that I can understand, but it just didn't connect with me, and I didn't get it.
Yeah, I think I felt the same way. So sorry, Lynne Ray Perkins. I know that this is like your career.
But if you told me about why you did what you did, I'd be like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense. Not because I'm like blowing smoke, but because I would just like to understand what the purpose was.
And I think like overall, like I really connected to what the book was doing, and I really, really, really liked. I know you said that it doesn't feel like natural like the rest of the book does, but I really liked all the stuff in the luau at the end. Especially when the kids get up at the roof, and there's this really lovely end of the book is when the necklace gets returned to Debbie, and we like very briefly are like in the mind of the necklace, and the necklace is frustrated because there's this moment where Hector and Debbie both have crushes that have kind of like fallen apart by the end of the summer, and there's this moment where like Debbie looks at Hector and Hector looks at Debbie, but they don't look at each other at the same time, and so there's like this kind of misconnection there, and the necklace is very frustrated that's happened. But at the same time, like it just kind of moves on, and it kind of then talks about them like releasing these fireflies, and it's just this very lyrical moment at the end of the book that I think like really ties it all together, and like everything in the book worked so well for me, except just the illustrations, which I just was like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I definitely do give this book a thumbs up, and I wish I would have read it when I was more coherent, because I think I would have enjoyed it more.
Maybe it's just not your type of book.
No, but I do.
You don't like episodic stuff.
But here's the thing. I noticed when I read it during the day, when I was very coherent, that I was very engaged with it. And I was like, I don't think it's that this is the only interesting part of the book. I think I was reading it at a bad time. If it were like a plot heavy book, it would have been fine that I was reading it when I was tired. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that is something about like books with like they're really plot forward.
Yeah.
Where you might not remember all the details, but you can at least like kind of string along. Like you can hang your attention on the plot, and maybe some of the details pass you by. Whereas this book is like entirely just the details.
Yeah.
Without like the plot.
It does feel like an independent film. Like this whole book felt like that to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I do want to just say one last thing that I forgot to mention in what I liked, but this is another like really funny turn of phrase to me. So early on in the book, Hector, the way that Hector gets introduced to guitar playing is that his sister Roanne takes him to an open mic where she is like she's like looking at this dreamboat singer, but she also needs Hector there because there's this other guy named Skip who really likes Roanne, but she doesn't really care about him. And she says the reason she doesn't like him because Hector's kind of realizes this mid event. It's like, oh, I'm here as like a buffer so that Skip doesn't like, bother Roanne too much. But Skip seems really nice, and he's like, why don't you like Skip? And she's like, the way he looks at me is like, he looks at me with cow eyes.
Yes.
And I just like, sorry, that has nothing to do with what we were saying, except that I just really liked that, the cow eyes. And I like immediately knew what she was talking about. This kind of like, just, you're obsessed with this person. You're just like gazing at them in a way that almost seems like brain dead, like, I don't know. I just like that. I also give this book thumbs up. I really like this book.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Thanks.
Who are
you thanking?
Lynne Ray Perkins, who wrote this novel.
The thanks.
I would actually really like to read her other book with Debbie in it.
I would too. I would give her another try in the daytime.
In the daytime. This is not a nocturnal novel.
When I'm not sleepy.
Yeah. Well, this concludes our foray into the 2000s for now. We're going to move into the 2010s. And next time, Rebecca, what are we reading?
We're going to read Last Stop on Market Street by Matt de la Peña. And it is a picture novel.
Yeah. I think... Well, I'm sure we'll talk about this more next time, but, it is very weird that the Newbery Medal, positions itself as, about children's literature, but it mostly is dealing with, literature for people who are, 8, 9, and 10 years old.
Yeah. I've read this book before to our kids at church, but it's been a long time, so I'm excited to revisit it.
Yeah, and unless I'm missing something, is this the only picture book that has been given? To me...
I think there's a picture book about Abraham Lincoln somewhere.
Maybe. It's just strange that, you would think they would just never give a picture book. A Newbery.
I am curious. I'm hoping that we can find, some research about, other books that were published this year. in 2016 and why the ALA chose Last Stop on Market Street.
Well, anyway, until then, keep reading.
Yeah, we'll probably come back on here sooner rather than later.
Given that this book is going to take us like 5 minutes to read. Anyway, you got anything else, Rebecca?
Oh, my username on Storygraph is
find it?
Rebecca O'Malley, no spaces, no apostrophes, no capitalization. Wow. Easy to find. If you also did not enjoy Road to Tender Hearts, let me know, because we can chat.
Also, if you'd like to chat in other ways besides thestorygraph.com, you can email us at newberychronicles@gmail.com. Newbery only has one R. Mm-hmm. That's hard for me to remember. I'm sure it's hard for other people to remember too. At any rate, that's all.
Thanks for listening.